We're looking into Kenya's dwindling food grain basket, and we're talking about all of this amidst an El Nino warning. Emmanuel Atamba is a program director, Food Systems Transformation, TMG Research. Tell us what that is in just a minute. Very good morning to you. Karibu sana, thank you for coming into the Situation Room this morning.
Asante.
Okisegere Ojepat is the president and CEO of the Fresh Produce Consortium of Kenya, also here with us this morning. Good morning.
Thank you. Morning.
Karibu sana.
Thank you.
All right, this is it's a very big conversation in terms of what's happening.
Yeah.
Likely that news that we've heard like this has not been as alarming ever. So we're looking at a very new situation. We're going to get into it this morning, but before we do, let's look at today's proverb. Dennis, to tell you where we are this week.
The proverb comes from the greatest country on land. Aye, you have to love it.
Okay,
Kenya. You know, the home of wild beast migration. They're home to the second highest point in the continent, Mount Kenya. They're home to a home that wants to grow 15 billion trees. We are big on climate change. You gotta love it.
Okay.
It is the home to expressway that makes you enjoy the view, especially when you're flying over Nairobi. You know, when you're driving using your car that is powered by chloride dioxide, you enjoy the views that Nairobi has. But let's go to the proverb. A rich man's fat does not stink. Otherwise, in Kikuyu, they say, Oduriwa itoga donugaga. How would you interpret it?
Yeah, I think it's a reality of how society sometimes excuses, provides some latitude to those who are seen to have resources, to have the power. So I would say, I mean, it can also be the question of how power can also be abused, because people will tolerate and people would be, and I think even if it stinks, we will complain. I think that is the bigger question.
Yeah. Ojepat, how would you interpret it?
I think it's an interesting one. I think for me, it's clear. Society has built us into silos and put us into standards, even though we come from the same environment. And therefore, we consider the rich the most privileged, and yet it's not always the case. So it also then goes back and ask ourselves, who are we?
Yeah.
Have we just started segregating our own people, or are we real that we can never be the same in the community? And therefore, in my opinion, it's a biased way of glorifying certain people with their status in the community, other than appreciating that all of us are worth. It doesn't mean that if you're poor, you do not have ideas. And I've also seen a situation where those who have money, in most cases, have no good ideas. Those who have good ideas have no money.
No
so
money.
Really, a combination of the two is more important than just looking at it from one side.
Well said. Asante sana.
Well, Ojepat, let's stay with you for a minute and let's start to, draw some lines so we can understand where it is that we're actually playing within at the moment. Kenya's bread basket. From an understanding that this is the region that is, number one, most fertile, will grow and produce the most food at the moment for the country. Is that the correct state?
An interesting conversation, and thanks for asking this question. We are a country that is actually rich, but a country that is also careless. A country that does not care about food. We are a country that receives more rain than we need. I have visited certain jurisdictions that receive an equivalent of one downpour in Nairobi for the whole year, and yet they are not hungry. And therefore, the situation at which we are and what I hear about food security, in my opinion, is a mixed grill. One is a perception, and the second thing is a disease that we have grown with because we have always remained careless, because we imagine the next rain season is coming anyway, and therefore we've never planned. And looking at the situation this morning in terms of El Nino, I hear this conversation and I laugh, because then there has never been a situation in Kenya where we are stable. It's either we have too much or we actually have nothing. Kenya receives more rain than we require. What we require is to to distribute, is to save the water, is to save whatever we have. And we just have to be clear that certain things need to be fixed so that we do not have to get to this 60 years plus after independence that we do not even have storage.
There has never been any situation in Kenya where the country has been stable.
There has never been a situation in Kenya where a country has had sufficient food. Okay. There's always too much in one area, in some season, and nothing in other seasons. Looking at statistics this month, it is said about 3.5 million Kenyans in dire need of food in this country, where one downpour in Nairobi sweeps houses and homes and takes water to the Indian Ocean, as if we have a contract with the Indian Ocean to supply them with fresh water. So we just have to get serious as a people. And then for me, just again to answer you is the food security for me is not having food in the country. I define food security as the availability, accessibility, and affordability. Yeah. So we may not have it, but we can afford it. And we may have it, but we may not even be able to access it. So we need to look at it from both sides. I have a mixed grill. So from the beginning, from the initial stage, that we are in a unique situation, and we just need to call ourselves to order.
Yeah.
That's my take.
Yeah. Emmanuel, when you talk about food systems in the country, it is just not about the harvest season. You know that we now harvested, the silos are full. NCP, that one, NCPB, food eco, put it in your granary, right? It is from the inputs that we have. It is in the irrigation there is. It is in the weeding process. It is in the pesticides that we apply. It is in harvesting, storage, and the value addition. That for me is what makes a food system that makes sense and that is sustainable, that is available, and is affordable, right? But in Kenya, we only think of grain. Kona mahindi, or we have wheat. That is our food basket. How do we then change for us to have a food system that makes sense for a country to be able to feed, and not just feed, but nutritionally so?
No, I think one is we are defining ourselves the wrong way most of the times. So when we think about food security and when we think about food systems, we are looking at big farms. So normally we are thinking in terms of big farms, big production, big bags of grains and all this. But this is not our system. This is not our context. We are a predominantly smallholder context as a country. So let's begin there. So most of our farmers are smallholder farmers. Most of our food is coming from smallholder farmers. When you turn to the consumption side, when you turn to the market side, then you also see that we are the way the market is structured is different from what you will find in the textbook. So food comes from the smallholder farmers. Sometimes follows the public transport system from, let's say, the indigenous vegetables from Kisii. They land somewhere in Marikiti, also from trucks that drive at night. They land at some point in Marikiti, and then small traders are the ones that then take the food and then deliver it to the last mile so that the consumer can access the food. When you look at the reality of the food system and how it is organized, it's very different from what you read in text and what you read in reports. So even that understanding becomes a bit problematic. I think a smallholder farming system has its own advantages. And one of the advantages is that as many people as possible have an opportunity to participate in production because they have access to a portion of land. And then as they participate in production, they are also participating in consumption at the same point. So therefore, it becomes easier to have a conversation where consumption and production are not very distant. So a lot of people in Nairobi, for example, would be connected to farming indirectly or directly, or at least they will be having a brother or a sister or an uncle or an aunt who is doing some sort of farming. So as a society, we are not very disconnected from production. And that is why when we talk about things like El Nino coming and all these things, everyone is affected because everyone is connected somehow to the soil. whether directly or indirectly, which gives us a lot of advantages that we now need to start to discuss and start to see what does a smallholder farming system or agriculture system requires. It is different from what is in the agriculture textbooks today. It is different from what is in the government plan when you talk about, we are doing big production, let's have aggregation centers at the county level and all those things. In some of the counties, if you go to some of the counties, especially in western counties, I keep telling my friends in Kakamega, Siaya, Bungoma, when they do their maize production, you know how much of that maize gets to the market outside those regions? It's very small percentage. But the consumption that happens in that region of the maize that they produce in that region is significant. But because we don't want to account for that, we don't want to document for that, we don't want to look at our census and see how many Kenyans are living on farms, for example. So that when we are thinking about, what is in the silo, what is in the storage, but really, is that what we should be paying attention to in a smallholder system? It's a different conversation there. So for me, I think if you misdefine the system that you want to intervene in, whatever intervention you suggest is going to fail.
Okay, so let's look at the food that's available in the country, and let's look at where it goes. Now, you talk about food that goes to the silos. In this case, under the Ministry of Agriculture, then the NCPB takes on this food that goes to the NCPB, that they can say, okay, our barns have food. Where does it come from? And then where does it go? For us to understand. Where does that food come from? That these barns, and where are these barns? And where does that food essentially then get distributed to?
Do you want to take it? I think for me, interesting conversation. Let's be honest. First of all, that we as a country have remained food insecure for long.
Okay.
Even as we talk, we are food insecure, and we're also nutritionally insecure. The farmers in this country have been defined the wrong way. And the production that we have within those smallholders, most of it does not leave their gates. First, it is consumed locally. Two, whatever gets to the stores does not go straight to NCPB. There is food that goes into millers and does not make its way to NCPB. There is food that goes into schools, institutions, groceries, eateries. That food does not find its way into what is defined as stores. The way it has been in this country, what we define in the store is what is found in NCPB, because we can account, because this money is spent on it by the government of the day.
Government buys from farmers.
Buys from farmers.
Okay.
But it's also a bit, it's a bit annoying, let me use the word that the only thing we seem to think about food in Kenya is maize. We consider maize as food and food as maize. We are forgetting that we have sweet potato, we have Irish potato, we call them potatoes now, it used to be Irish now, I don't know whose potatoes it is. We have so many other things that we do that even in terms of buying, there has never been an allocation towards procuring of those indigenous foods by the governments. We have always allocated money to NCPB to buy maize. And from certain farmers, and in most cases, those we consider large scale or medium scale, who can afford to have an excess of a bag beyond their normal food consumption. And therefore, it becomes unfair from the beginning, because then if you have a little bit bigger land, then the government of the day will have some resources to procure maize from you. But the people who grow in Eastern Kenya, for example, what we call pulses, those pulses are never bought by government. The beans.
Why?
I mean, have you heard anywhere where there's...
Why are they not bought?
It's because we have considered maize as food, and
nothing
food
else
is maize. And also bulk. Then let me progress and make it more complicated.
Okay.
When it comes to milk, because milk is still food.
Yes.
It's bought by the cooperatives. It is not funded directly by the government. It's funded by the dairies. If you go to Brookside and the like, buy it, and it's basically commercial. And we have allowed that system to be commercialized, and it moves towards there. Even when the government dictates on the prices, but you still see there competition, and that competition has made that specific sector look more stable in terms of the distribution, right? But when it comes to maize, we all wait, and yet we do not have cost of production. Now listen, who supplies, to answer your question, who supplies the maize? It is a few people who are privileged to have slightly bigger land than the normal person, and largely the farmers who grow maize. Yes. And we have lost it because food security is not about maize. It's not about cereals. Food security is about everything that we can eat, starting from vegetable, whether it's herbs, whether it's your pulses, whether it's your ugali. For the people who eat ugali, I think that becomes it. For people like myself who do not eat ugali, do I look unhealthy just because I didn't eat ugali? No. So we need to look at food security from a different perspective and definition, and remove maize from food security, but make maize part of the food security that a country requires. That way, then we will look at, let me ask a farmer from Kadhiani in Ukambani. Let me ask a farmer from Kisii who does not grow maize. A farmer in Meru who does not grow maize. A farmer in Nyandarua who grows cabbage. When do you look at them as people and farmers who contribute towards the food basket of this country?
Hey, Ojepat says it doesn't eat ugali.
I don't. Do I look unhealthy? So are you getting where I'm coming from? So the maize we have is only coming from a few people who are privileged to have land, and not the 85% plus smallholder farmers. And that is why the whole conversation then becomes more of a political situation than a real food situation, because we need to look at beyond just politics and be able to say, what does Kenya produce in what volumes, and how do we apportion that as part of a food security and build resilience, consistency, and sustainable systems that allow a supply of that value to come in. For example, vegetable and short crops that take 3 months, that take 6 months, that take even 2 months. We do herbs, we have vegetable. When do we get vegetables, dry them, and make them a food security issue?
I mean, Atamba, based off what Ojepat is saying, it is, we need to get out of NCPB conversations where all you think about is maize, because one asks the question, if you go to a place like Turkana, I mean predominantly dry areas, maize is not is not part of their palate, because what they have is their animals, you know, perhaps, and some rivers where they grow their vegetables here and there, but that those who are producing, say, if it's ugali, maize, they should be able to feed into Turkana, and Turkana, or the northern part of the country, who are predominantly livestock keepers, should be able to feed back to other areas of the country. Because let's be honest, we've never seen a protectionist move where, say, if Nyanza is known to be good at growing something, that is what they focus on. If these other areas good at maize, that's what they focus on. But there should be a mechanism where all these feed into the food basket of the country that would then address nutrition and food security that we're talking about. Are we having these conversations on that level, or have we just left it to be another political slogan?
I mean, I would say there are a number of quite interesting government programs. If you look at how government programs, and if you look at major programs like NARIG, NAV-CDP, and other programs that I know, so Ojepat understands that. So there are a number of programs, there are a number of investments that are also looking into the other value chains. I would not say that we are only looking at maize. The problem is that Kenyans are only asking about maize. So this is a problem that is also fueled by Kenyans. So a lot of Kenyans just monitor the unga prices, and they say, okay, so if the unga prices are okay, then we are okay. And we are the ones who are telling the politicians that we want to hear about maize. But as Ojepat says, there is a lot of food Kenyans are consuming a lot of food, a lot of diverse foods, and today, if we monitored our consumption, if we monitored our markets and flow of food, you will realize that in fact the ugali consumption is reducing, and we are having people like Ojepat now saying, okay, so I'm not an ugali person, but generally consumption of ugali is going down, creating space for potatoes, creating space for rice, creating space for wheat. And if you are looking at rice and wheat, for example, and you look at how much we are importing for rice and wheat, then you see that we are not thinking about what people are actually consuming, how much wheat is being consumed, how much rice is being consumed, and the deficit that keeps growing between what is produced locally and what is consumed, at least for these two main starches.
Okay.
Now, yeah.
So let me stay with you for a minute, Atamba, because people like what they know.
Yes. Yeah. Yes.
That the chances of you liking something else is based heavily on what you know.
Yeah.
If you don't know of this other thing, the likelihood of you to push for it then drops significantly. So are we also then saying that this thinning bread basket that we talk about is thinning for maize, and that there's a possibility that there is a variety which is still untapped, for which Kenya would not have a problem reaching food security?
Yes. Yes, there is. If we become honest about what we are actually eating as Kenyans, definitely maize is a big part of it, but it is not the only part.
It's not even indigenous to Kenya.
Yes, so it's not the only part. I mean, in Western Kenya, we can argue it's indigenous, but this is a different debate.
You could start to argue. We could be here for a while.
Yeah, but I think the biggest problem is really dealing with the fragility that are in the fragilities that are in the system. So I talked about Kenya being a smallholder context, and what kind of interventions do you need in a smallholder context? What kind of resilience building do you need in a smallholder context? I think these are questions that we are not asking. So, for example, El Nino, which is the discussion that everyone is talking about now, El Nino is a natural current, event. Yeah. It's a natural occurrence. It's not something that is new. It's not because of climate change. So climate change provides a baseline. If we are talking about a slightly warmer world, it provides a baseline that can actually lead to maybe a more extreme El Nino event. But El Nino in general is an event that we are aware about. We know that El Nino happens, and floods are things that we know. We can even predict. We can create models that predict how often we are expecting floods and things like this. What we have not done is we have not looked at how resilient our farming system is, how resilient our consumers are. Because, for example, as Ojepat is saying, it's also about access. It's not only about production. Yes. And if more and more Kenyans, if more and more households are not able to afford food, then we always will have to come back to this conversation of subsidies. That we will have to subsidize unga at some point if people cannot be able to afford it. But that should not have been the case. If we deal with our income conversation, if we deal our job opportunities conversation, you don't have to subsidize consumption, because then consumption takes care of itself. And when you have a strong consumer base, when you have consumers that actually can afford the value of the food, then they can even afford to pay the farmer more for what they are producing, and therefore the system can work. So we have to move slightly, I think, broader than the discussion of how much is in the store. And maybe also just to say, how much maize government buys is only 5% of what is produced. So the government capacity of NCPB is only 2 million bags, by the way, countrywide. So we are producing about over 40 million bags. So when the government says we are buying from farmers, what they are talking about is 5% of what we produce. And yet we are not having strong conversations about how much of this grain will then be bought by the different companies from the millers to go into livestock feeds, or what is being eaten by consumed by people. So there are a lot of discussions that are not happening. And I think the only thing I can say is that we need to really go deeper and understand the system better, so that even as we talk about, there's a risk that is coming in our direction, we are vulnerable. How vulnerable are we, and how do we make sure that we are building the capacity of our communities to respond to externalities? Because risks will come, shocks will come. It's a question of how ready are we?
I hear you, Ojepat, saying that there is enough food. We're just focusing on the wrong food. Because when we say that there might be a problem, it's because everybody's talking about this maize. Tamba says that, you know what, we need to look and see what actually happens in that system. Is the focus being made on maize because we are too lazy or uncreative to say, let us focus our attention here? Where are we in that conversation in terms of actually moving this thing on its axis and saying, let maize be one of the things that you can consume, but if you put everything on it, then we're likely to get into the situation that we are at the moment.
Yeah, thanks. I think I will go back to what I say, that I insist that maize is not food and food is not maize.
Okay.
Maize is just one of the foods that is consumed in Kenya, particularly in the rural community, in certain parts of this country. If you go to the urban area, there's a lot of consumption of rice and beans, for example, as opposed to ugali. When we go to other areas, there's a lot of spaghetti, a lot of wheat, and a lot of veg. If we go to Kambani, we will eat a lot of pulses as opposed to ugali, since they don't even get that maize. And as we said, mostly the challenge we have in this country is not production. It is distribution. We have seen instances where cabbage in Nyandarua and milk is being poured, and yet in Turkana, northeastern or lower eastern, or even the coastal region that has never fed itself, remains hungry. So I'd like us to look at a situation where, number one, it's a good thing that we have been told El Nino is coming. The weatherman has done the work, and their people, they've told us what it is, and they've even told us when most likely this is coming to happen. The question is, what are we doing in terms of mopping out, first of all, getting statistics of exactly what we have. We've had instances of people holding food, maize stocks in Rift Valley, for example, and Northeast, North Rift particularly, where we are told there's a lot of food, maize in stores. So have we really ascertained how much we have, and who is having this data? And if this maize is not in PCPB, how much of this is in people's stores? Because I come from a family, for example, whenever we grew something, our millet, it will go into a granary right in the home. Have we taken stock of that happens in the villages and get to know that every village is secure? And say, what is excess? And how do we get that excess taken to a place where there's no sufficient supply? And in that case, who is funding it? Are we funding it by ourselves, like those of us who are in Nairobi? We go to the store and buy. We actually, in most cases, don't ask where that food came from. Is there a traceability system to help us to be able to establish where we are? And two, if that is the case, number one, if we're able to ascertain and get to know the situation, food security, I said here, is not about just having food. It's about affordability, accessibility, and are we able to afford? Is it accessible? And is it available? Is it available in country or out of country? Is it accessible, even if it's available? So if we're able to address the accessibility, availability, and affordability, then the very reason why we import rice and wheat into this country is because it's not available here, but we can access it from elsewhere. We need, at this point in time, to find those government agencies, particularly that are charged with the responsibility of looking at food security, in this case, AFA and the Ministry of Agriculture, to already tell us this is how it looks. This is the stock available. This is where we are. And then get into this conversation of saying, if this is what we have in terms of maize. By the way, let me tell you that statistics show, Atamba, you may want to confirm this to me, that a human being can eat at least an average of 1 bag of maize per year. So that's the way you measure. Just 1 bag per person per year of maize. So if we are talking about food security and we are 55 million, so we need to be talking about, assuming everybody eats maize, so we need 55 million bags of maize to sort us out when it comes to maize. What do we talk about? Beans, peas, and the veg, and the rest of the product. So we need to look at that distribution. At the moment, it's very annoying that we're having this conversation and we have no data. And even if there's data, it's not credible enough for us to be able to bank.
So wait, I'm sorry. Allow me. I'm sorry.
Please do it. Go ahead. It's a conversation.
It's just for clarification. So at the moment, we have a Ministry of Agriculture. Surprise. do we know? I mean, you said we have no data, so you're saying that we don't know how much food Kenya is actually producing on the year to feed its people.
From where I sit, yes.
We don't know.
We know how much maize.
Okay. So
because all the conversations about maize, rice, wheat.
Okay.
There's no conversation about veg. There's no conversation about beans. There's no conversation about
milk
or milk or something. There's a conversation about maize.
Meat,
Okay. Meat. We have a conversation around about a single item called maize. And an added of wheat and rice, which are basically all of them are under one side.
So even this maize, is there enough for these 55 million bags per year?
No. I do not believe in it.
It's not.
It's not there.
It's not. And I think, I mean, there are quite a number of people who have tried to come up with technologies to even use like aerial images to predict the crop health and therefore the productivity per year. But these things have not been rolled out. So even what you get from government is an estimate. Even what you get from government is an estimate. And this estimate is coming from, how many bags have been taken through the subsidy program, how much seed has been bought, and how much land is under the crop. It's an estimate. But I think it is very difficult to tell exactly how much food is available and where it is. I will not go into that conversation because it's very difficult to tell. For the reason that it's very difficult to tell exactly how much food we have. Because remember again, we don't eat as a country. Wewe unakula kwako, huyu anakula kwake, mimi nakula kwangu. We don't eat as a country. So we don't have a big dinner table where we say, Kenyans, now let's come and eat. And this is a big mistake that we always have when you talk about food security, because not every person is vulnerable to the same extent. Not every person is affected by different shocks to the same extent. So I'm more concerned on the question of understanding, one, what are our vulnerabilities, which areas are fragile, which areas are livelihoods affected when we have extreme, for example, events like an extreme El Nino event where we have floods and things like this. Who is vulnerable? Okay. Then what systems do we need to put in place to reach the vulnerable? Because for those that are not vulnerable, it doesn't matter whether the unga is coming from Washington, D.C. or from Kakamega. No. If you have the money, the unga will follow you. Food follows where people have resources. And that is why today, when we are talking about El Nino, I don't think our friends sitting in Runda, in Karen, are very worried about it. Because they
sweeps
know
their houses away.
Yes, because they know whatever happens, if some livestock are swept away, if some houses are demolished and all those things, they will still have a place, a supermarket. It will be 2 times more expensive maybe, but they will have the money to buy it. So the conversation I want us to have is really coming from the point of, in the event of a situation like El Nino, I mean, it is still a possibility. What is being discussed is a possibility. It has not been fully confirmed that we are actually going to have an El Nino event. The highest projections I've seen from some key actors is 70-80%. So there is still a chance that maybe we'll not have this event. But there are already other weather events that are happening, weather situations that are happening. For example, if you go to the North Rift today, for the last about 6 weeks, it has not rained. If you go to Uasin Gishu County, you go to Trans Nzoia County, this is where I come from, and I can tell you that the maize is not looking good there, for example. Just as but always for me, the question is, okay, who should we be worried about? Who is going to be affected? In Nairobi, the people in informal settlements are always affected by these events, both in terms of the infrastructure that is affected, but also at the same time in terms of access to food.
I want to bring in Ojepat, because I've had a conversation with him before and I think he's just forgotten about it. But there's a time we're having a conversation about Matonge, Matonge market. And we're talking about the ecosystem that has been created, that they're able to import food at an affordable price. And there is the element of tracking of this food from the source to the end consumer, and you're able to say this cow was slaughtered, say in the Congo, it was shipped, it is here in this market. You're able to trace all that. We're talking about a country that imports almost everything, but the food is available, it is accessible, it is affordable, and there is intention in ensuring that nutritional value of the same has been received. We're having this conversation with former Ambassador Bitange Ndemu. What have they done to ensure that they have food that makes sense to them, as opposed to us, who we have all the rain there is, we have all the land there is, but you're not taking advantage of the same?
It takes for all this, and that's why I started by saying it's an unfortunate situation that we are sitting here without statistics of every single thing that we grow that contributes to what I consider food security. And we're biased, and we have been put in this situation much more from a political situation. I sit working for the horticulture industry, for example, the fresh produce industry. And I can tell you for free, the people who grow flowers, they already know when their flower will be in the market next year or next month. We know how long it takes for us to push our avocado out of Kenya to a certain destination, the number of days and the volumes. We know predictably this is what we expect. It is driven by the market statistics. And I wanted to just go back to what Atamba said. When you look at what government gives us in terms of statistics, I don't know when last you got the real-time data. You're always told by the year 2024. I think that's a lot of validation that's going on today, and we're into 2026. So we have 2 years gap of data. In some places, you'll be told you'll be told recent data of 2022, 2023. That's what government considers recent.
The recent data.
What I consider recent is today.
2026.
I know what was exported last night out of this country to which destination. I know which airline. I know the airway bill. That conversation is not happening at the ward level. It's not happening at the village level. Because the government of the day, when we adopted devolution, we actually killed agriculture. And they killed the systems. We devolved agri, but we did not devolve the functionality and ensure that is working. We have a CEC in charge of agriculture who has staff who are not enabled. And it takes me to what annoys me very much. And I've told you this before. In a government of the day, and the statement I'm going to use is quite strong, please. I say this country must either delete the statement they call agriculture is the mainstay of this country, or the backbone. Those are the interchangeably used in any government documents, either mainstay or backbone. But this year's budget, if you look at it, statistics show that it has only been allocated 1.3% of the annual budget, against what Kenya has ratified more than once of 10% on the bare minimum. And expect this country to flourish and expect security in this country to improve. I can tell you, colleagues here, that the security of the country is determined by if their citizens can eat. If you have enough food, why do you have guns? Most of the crime scenes we see around is because people are struggling to get money to do what? To buy food. So if you can provide food, we'll be okay. Now back to your question. The challenge we have at the moment, again, is still skewed towards the political crops.
Political crops.
I'm using the word political crops. You'll be discussing coffee. You'll be discussing tea. You'll be discussing maize. Those are the crops. We are not discussing bananas. We are not discussing potatoes. And if we discuss potatoes, it will be which variety of potato. And therefore, this conversation must come out of the political line. And this is what I want to ask you. From where we sit, what we need to do is to have a serious conversation about what is agriculture in Kenya? What do we define as agriculture in Kenya?
It's mainstay.
If it's a mainstay, what are we doing to ensure that that mainstay is actually a mainstay?
So the behavior...
This agriculture is being funded largely by the international community. Please challenge me if I'm wrong. And I can say this again. Why will a country that would like to be independent, solid, speak with authority, be able to have its infrastructure that feeds its own citizens, being funded largely by friends? Why don't we have it and then ask friends to top up whatever we need to do? Tell me today where you have a program of maize, of mangoes in Machakos and Lower Eastern, Makueni. Why will mangoes go into rotting? Last season, we lost a lot of mangoes because all of us want Ojepat and the team within the export to export all the mangoes. But we can't get those mangoes pushed to Northeastern where they require a lot of nutrition.
Oh, Kivuta Kibwana tried by setting up this factory, which was going to then harness
Kivuta
the pulp
Kibwana did not
and
set
the
up
juice.
the factory.
I said he tried.
I speak with authority.
Yeah. Did he not try?
I was involved.
Did he not try at all?
I was involved in the feasibility study.
Yeah.
And that facility and the donors that put in money, including up to the launch. We know how much the county put in, and we know what the international community. The intention is very well. But do you know that that facility is idle 9 months of the year?
Yeah.
Why?
Because we designed it for mangoes. Mangoes are also only in season for this. And yet, how much does that factory take? Less than 10% of the total production that comes from the same area.
So what you're saying,
and so what we need to do
the
is
orchards,
to dry.
the trees, I understand. So the trees that are producing mango, for example, in this lower eastern part, essentially a majority of the fruit will fall to the ground and rot and disappear.
It becomes a food waste.
Okay.
Why? We have not invested on it because it's not a political crop. And therefore, we have not put a lot of effort there because what we needed to do is to buy up all those mangoes, distribute to other parts of the country and sell them fresh, or at least encourage what I'll call dry the vegetable, the mango, and eat it as a dry veg as part of our food security. That is just mangoes. Let me use the word cabbage. If you go to Meru and Nyandarua, how much cabbage goes into West? If you go down to Kitui, there was a time Governor Ngilu tried with green grams. And we condemned her for having overproduced green grams. And we could not put an intervention, and we called it her project. And yet this was food. And so I could continue saying this. What I mean here is that we need to move out from, for lack of a better term, from this joke of calling agriculture a mainstay, and we do not support it. And we need to devolve not just agriculture by name, devolve resources and hold men and women accountable for every resource that we have given to them. Like we will account. I mean, you account for your time here. When are we going to hold people accountable? Even for the fertilizer that the government has subsidized. And do you know how much of those subsidies goes to other crops other than maize and wheat? The majority of that subsidy goes to the maize and wheat. How comes we're not asking ourselves what kind of fertilizers, in terms of our nutrition, do I need to produce? Cowpeas, and your African leafy vegetables. Who accounts for that? Where is it accounted? Is it part of the food security? The answer is yes. Do we look at them that way? For now, no, because it's not politically motivated.
So is there, Atamba, any validity or authenticity in raising the alarm about Kenya not being food secure or maybe a thinning bread basket when you have actually not looked at the options that are actually available in the country? Can you do that authentically?
Yes. I mean, and that's why I said it's difficult to count what everyone is keeping in their kitchen or in their stores. But what we can count is the number of people that we see struggling to access food. Is the number of people who, if they are asked today, if they are worried about what they will eat for dinner this morning, they will say, yes, I'm worried about whether I will get food for dinner. And what we can count is the number of people who in Nairobi today woke up in the morning, took a shower and tried to look for a job, and they moved around town, and up to midday they have not found something to do. And therefore we are asking ourselves, what will they eat? Okay, so I think what we can see the problem. On the other side, we see a problem. We see a real problem that we have people who are not able to feed themselves in dignity, because this is what it should be about. You should be able to feed yourself in dignity. Whether you are engaged in the agriculture space or you are engaged in providing services elsewhere, you're engaged in media, you are holding the camera, you are doing the social media, you are doing whatever you're doing, you should be able to feed yourself in dignity. Now, when we look at how many households in Nairobi, in other places in the country that are afraid when they hear about El Nino and they are afraid of whether they're able to eat, we see that there's a problem. So I think this is where I will sound the alarm from. I would sound the alarm from the point of view that a significant number of Kenyans are worried that they might not be able to have food. And whether the food is in the supermarket, whether the price is reduced by 2 shillings or by 10 shillings, it does not mean that all of us have access to that food. So on the production side, what I see, and I agree with Ojepat, that there is a mismatch between what is needed.
Yeah.
So when we are talking about climate change, you're talking about reduced precipitation. And again, it's important to still also insist that rain does not produce food. We need water to produce food. So it's not about waiting for the rain or the right rain. I think also if our farmers are enabled to have access to good technology, there's a lot of technologies that are available today. I'm a farmer myself, and I think what benefits the farming ecosystem is to even have basic technology for solar irrigation, for example, things like this that can make farming possible even in a difficult climatic condition.
Indeed.
So I think those are the conversations that we need to have. Yeah.
And I think that we need to continue pushing them, because it's clear that there's something that can actually be done. This is not a situation whereby you're saying, well, throw our hands up in the air and all hope is lost.
No.
And that we need to entrench these conversations really quickly. 10 seconds.
Yeah, I just wanted to say this. Number one, it's not about pushing. The leadership in this country must change. First, go back to what we have signed and give agriculture the budget. Two, I am asking the MPs, they go back to Parliament, because they're the ones who appropriate resources that we have, and really ask ourselves, how do they appropriate the monies? For the people who are dealing with devolution, because that's where agri is being done, can we ensure that the right resources are channeled? And for the people in the private sector, for example, we're exporting. Do you know we don't rely on statistics on rain, but what we're doing is just ensuring that things work. So truth of the matter is that we are in a situation where it's very unpredictable, it's very emotional, it's more political, other than looking at facts. I think we need to separate the emotional political statements, alarmist statements, and get back to facts with data and statistics, real-time data. And you can invite us back here again and we'll have this sober conversation so that we can hold those people accountable. I wish I could be sitting here with the Minister for Agriculture or the PS and sitting here with the Parliament for them to be able to tell us as parliamentarians what are they appropriating, and for the executive, how do they allocate those resources, and for county governments, what are they doing.
That's probably who will be invited next time. Of course, in addition to yourselves, Emmanuel Atamba is a Program Director, Food Systems Transformation, TMG Research, as well as Okisegere Ojepat is the President and CEO of Fresh Produce Consortium of Kenya. Gentlemen, thank you for being with us this morning.
Thank you for having us.
Santani Sana.
This is the Situation Room, the only way to start your day.